Welcome everyone to part 5 of Under the Surface, my BokuAkaKuroKen Angst series. We are slowly but surely approaching the happy end, so I hope you're all excited for this part. Keep the content warnings in mind, and now let's go. The second time around, it was much harder to coax Kenma out of hiding, but Bokuto didn't push. He sat before the bed and continued playing Mario Karts in hopes it would entice the younger to join him like before. This way, Kenma wasn't alone. He could make sure he was safe without pressuring him to talk or even acknowledge him, since he seemingly kept himself busy. In truth, his mind was solely focused on the presence behind him. He was scared on his behalf, worried and anxious, but he tried his best not to let it show. He had positioned himself in a way that didn't block the door to make sure Kenma didn't feel caged. However, when he did get up after a long while and slowly sneaked out the door, his heart clenched. He didn't stop him though. He knew that Keiji and Tetsuro would notice if he tried to leave the house, which, considering his current state and the fact that he was very well known due to his YouTube channel, wasn't a good idea. They would have to come up with a strategy if that happened. But within this house, he was free to go wherever, even though it didn't seem like he believed that. He tested the waters slowly, fighting himself out of his rigid position first, then slowly crawling to the edge of the bed and waiting once more. Bokuto could feel his gaze on him. He acknowledged it shortly with a small smile before turning back to the game and hoped the message was clear. You're free to go. You don't need my permission, but if you'll ask, I'll gladly grant it. He still flinched when his foot touched the floor, and after overcoming the initial shock, sprinted from the room. After he left, Bokuto lowered the controller slowly, contemplating. He could hear doors being opened and closed as Kenma explored the house. He wasn't sure anymore if it was a good idea when he noticed the door he stopped at and understood. The bathroom. Relief filled his heart when after a few minutes Kenma opened the door to the gaming room again and stood a little uncertain in the frame. Do you want to join? He offered him the other controller once more, and upon realizing that he wouldn't get punished for leaving, Kenma nodded. His hands trembled as he accepted the gaming device again and sat down beside him. But that was soon forgotten as his eyes narrowed in concentration and filled with excitement. The vibrant colors of the screen reflected within the warm gold, and Bokuto smiled at the sight, causing Kenma to huff. You're not even trying. He pouted, and Bokuto would have laughed hadn't he been so clearly challenged right now. Oh, just you wait. I'll win the next round. To add insult to injury, that coaxed a laugh out of the smaller, along with a look of disbelief. And he did in fact not win the next round, or the round after that, or the round after that. By round 6, Akashi came to his aid with 2 plates of breakfast, causing Kenma to only flinch slightly and still win, which she took as progress. What are you doing? Playing Mario Kart? Yes, but he sucks. Surprise flashed over Akashi's face at Kenma's direct answer, but it was quickly followed by a small smile. Really? I gotta see that. He sat down on the bed and watched as the game proceeded. There was the pride Kenma took in his gaming abilities shining through, and he didn't even notice that instead of watching the game, Akashi was focused on him, noticing with great relief how much more relaxed he seemed. After Kenma had continued to kick Bokuto's ass in the game, causing the other to groan in defeat, while eating his breakfast, they were at 13-0 for Kenma. You're so mean, Ken. No, you're just bad. Kenma! He whined, causing Akashi to chuckle, which earned him a betrayed look from the ace. Maybe you need a stronger opponent. I could get Tetsu. He plays well. As if Tetsuro is better than me. He ignored Bokuto's protest and instead focused on Kenma. He didn't want to overwhelm him and saw the hesitation in his eyes. But ultimately, either the idea of someone at least a little familiar or the lure of a stronger opponent was stronger, and he nodded. It didn't take long for all four of them to sit around the TV, tracing the little cards with their eyes. At first, Kenma tensed, visibly more nervous now that all three of them were here, but when it almost cost him his win, the competitiveness took over again. Akashi couldn't say he didn't take great delight in watching both of his boyfriends getting defeated by the 7-year-old version of Kenma. It was quite amusing, and for just a moment it chased the dark thoughts and worries away. That was until suddenly, during one of the newer tracks, Kenma's eyes glazed over again, unfocused. He froze in place, slowly drifting further and further into a trance-like state, until the controller fell from his hands. Kenma? As an observer, Akashi was the first to notice, but as soon as the name had left his lips, all the attention was on the smaller. Bokuto hesitantly paused the game. Their first instinct was to shake him carefully or wrap him in their arms and wake him with kisses, but everything that happened today considered, that obviously wasn't an option. They were forced to stay put and wait for any sign from the gamer, who by now seemed fully dissociated from reality. Keiji, is he okay? Should we bring him to a doctor? Bokuto's hands dug themselves into his shirt, fighting not to simply pull his beloved into his arms. Kuro too tensed, but shook his head. Sure, these symptoms could potentially stem from some type of physical ailment, but considering everything he knew, it was unlikely. That would only cause further stress. Unless it gets way worse, we should wait for him to stabilize before suggesting a doctor's appointment. He gritted his teeth. The thought that Kenma's mental health could deteriorate so rapidly due to a single relapse that he'd needed to be admitted as an emergency patient caused him to shiver. He would definitely suggest therapy after this was over, but he hoped they could manage his relapse without a hospital admission. The stress could unnecessarily prolong his healing if he found himself in another unfamiliar environment in such a vulnerable state. It was like being underwater. All the noises around him were muffled, all the colors dulled and blurred. An eerie calmness had claimed his mind and body, that was slowly drowned out by the increasing static reality had become. Confusion was the first thing he felt as he slowly came to. The colors around him assembled into shapes. The light, although dimmed, seemed blinding, and the hues utterly too vibrant. It was surreal. None of it looked real. It took him a moment to place the room he was in and recognize the source of the vibrancy as a video game. For a moment he doubted he himself was real until he recognized his gaming room. The confusion lifted the more his surroundings fell into place. This was his room. Right, he had decided to go to bed here instead of sleeping with the others. But then, why was he sitting on the ground playing a video game? He distinctly remembered going to bed. Kenma? He flinched. Finally, the noises became coherent and he recognized them as voices. His boyfriend's voices. Slowly, he lifted his head, realizing that not just Bokuto, but all three of them sat beside him and eyed him with concern written all over their faces. When did they get here? Sorry, I was really tired yesterday, so I just went to sleep here. He could only assume that was the reason behind their concern, though it made little sense. It wasn't that unusual for him to sleep separately. May it be sensory issues or just exhaustion, sometimes he just needed his space. They exchanged a look, and Kenma felt a shiver running down his spine. He had the distinct suspicion he was missing something. Little things started to fall out of place. Why was he on the ground? Why wasn't the sun just rising? It looked like noon outside. With the confusion returning, it paired with a slowly growing sense of panic as he tried to make sense of the things around him and found that he couldn't. He was lacking vital information. More, he was lacking time. Hours, as it seems, that had been erased from his memory, and the more obvious that became, the more his discomfort grew. He tried to remain calm, but it got harder and harder, more so because none of his partners offered to comfort him. What had he done? Why were they so distant? Why did they look at him like that? Kenma, don't be scared. We won't hurt you, remember? What? He didn't understand. Why did he say that? Tears assembled in his eyes as the confusion slowly became overwhelming, but none of them reached out to wipe them away as they usually would. The first sob clawed its way from his throat, causing Kuro's face to scrunch in sympathy, pain reflected in his eyes, but he still kept his distance. Why do you... Kuro? The old nickname fell from his lips instinctively, out of nowhere, and he could see the sad smile that tugged at the tallest lips. It's alright. You're safe. He knew that, but he didn't feel as safe as he usually would. Everything he usually considered a source of comfort was just slightly out of place. The more his senses sharpened, the more he became aware of it, and his panic grew. Whenever he was overwhelmed by change, his partners were his safe haven. But they too had changed this time, and he didn't know why. If there were truly hours missing from his memory, had he done something to warrant this response? They didn't look mad, but Kenma didn't know what to think anymore. The three of them were the only ones he could read almost perfectly. Emotions and reactions were tricky, but theirs were familiar, so when they suddenly became senseless, his world came to a screeching halt. Nothing felt right anymore. Everything was out of place. The thought repeated in his head, and with every time his chest constricted more. Maybe we should leave for a moment, give him space. What? Why? What was happening? What on earth could have happened to warrant such a reaction? Kenma's world crumbled, and for a moment he was frozen in shock, forced to just observe as Akashi got up and Kuro with him. Bokuto hesitated, but backed off a little as well, giving him space. Why was this happening? It took a moment for realization to kick in. Kenma still felt sluggish and had to actively fight the rising panic within his chest. He ordered his legs to move and his hands to reach. With an uncoordinated stumble, he got up and caught Akashi's wrist before falling to his knees again. He didn't let go, and Akashi stopped abruptly. Kenma, why are you doing this? Please don't leave me alone. I don't know what happened, but please, I'm sorry if I did something. Don't leave me, please. He never begged like this. Not that he remembered. It felt as though everything, including himself, was falling apart and he didn't know why. His boyfriends were the only constant he could always rely on. He needed them. He couldn't lose that. Not now when everything felt so wrong. Keiji, please. I'm sorry. I swear You remember? What? Akashi looked at him with wide eyes. He had turned around and held onto his shoulders, looking at him with an intensity Kenma didn't expect. Kenma, how old are you right now? He didn't have time to be confused by the question. Kuro knelt down next to him, waiting tensely for his answer. 26. What? A heartbeat of silence. Then, a sigh of relief that echoed through the room, and suddenly, in the blink of an eye, the atmosphere had changed. Kuro and Akashi, being closest to him, collapsed into a hug, pulling him tightly into their embrace. Bokuto followed suit, and tall as he was, put his arms around all three of them, trapping Kenma in the middle. Thank goodness. It should have confused him more. It should have worried him, but Kenma didn't pause to consider what implications their behavior had. He was just glad they stayed, that they didn't leave him behind, that they held him close once more, and that the odd distance between them reclined rapidly. Although trapped and crushed in their embrace, he felt he could breathe more freely again than before. The tension seeped from his muscles as he let himself fall into their arms. He was safe. Everything around him might change, but they were here, providing the stability he needed. Thank you so much for watching to the end. God, let me tell you, this was frustrating to edit and voice over. As you all know, my phone is still broken, so I had to improvise. This is the result. Please don't be too mad at me if the quality is not the best, which I know it isn't. And if you liked it regardless, please remember to leave a like and subscribe. If all goes well, the next part is supposed to come out tomorrow, but as you see, the currently improvised method is driving me insane. Special thanks to my Nudinekos who support me throughout this time. You are the best. And here are my other social media to check out, or even better, you can check out some of the other videos in the end card. And now I hope you have a wonderful and amazing day.
Step 1, wake up early, gonna rise with the sun. Step 2, get some good, some food in you. Step 3, think real hard about what you wanna be. Step 4, everybody just do your thing.
Wake up, today's gonna be a good day. Wake up.